All right, welcome back, Powers on Sports Podcast. Appreciate you finding us. We got a great segment. We got the game of the week coming up this Saturday in Knoxville, Showdown SEC style. We got one of the big rivalries in the SEC, Alabama, Tennessee. Probably the biggest game at Tennessee in probably 20 years, to be honest with you. I know they've had some other years where they've had some good teams, but this is a legit Tennessee team that's going to be hosting potentially a wounded Alabama team. We don't know what the status of Bryce Young is yet, but no better person to talk Tennessee Vols, SEC, and even some Alabama than my Tampa guy from Jefferson High School up at 99.1 The Sports Animal in Knoxville, Mr. Vince Ferrara. Welcome back, Vince.
My man, JP, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. All right, so it's just, college game day coming back for like the second time in a month to Knoxville.
Yeah.
Before we get to the game this week, let's look back to last week a little bit. I want to start with the emphatic victory in Baton Rouge. A lot of people thought LSU was ripe for an upset there. Give Tennessee and Heupel credit. They went in there and manhandled LSU. Just your thoughts.
Really impressed, Jason. I thought LSU would be more of a challenge to Tennessee than they were. I was telling people during the week, you guys are making way too much of that Auburn game where LSU did not play great and had to rally from 17 points down. As it turned out, some of the flaws they showed in that game were even more exposed against Tennessee. Opening kickoff, I know some people view that as Tennessee got a lucky break, LSU fumbled the opening kickoff. Here's the thing with that. I think the coaches were all over the situation. I asked Heupel about the sun because the returner was actually looking into the sun, and he had switched spots with his other returner prior to that. So now that returner just got to that spot, is looking into the sun. And I asked him if that came into play in deciding to do that sky kick, which we really haven't seen all that much. He said, yeah, it did factor in our decision. If we were to get the coin flip, and that's what we're going to do. And he said, yeah, factored in the decision. That's pretty astute for the coaching staff to be aware of where the sun is facing and then decide on a style of kickoff based on that. So really sharp. It just shows that this coaching staff is in tune with everything. Their players,
the details.
Yeah, the details. And so the way they didn't look ahead to Alabama. Surely they had no reason to, because they're not that good yet to where they can overlook people. But they did, and they were ready for that atmosphere. Brian Kelly said they were outcoached. They absolutely were outcoaching LSU. This team has a whole bunch of answers, and they're explosive, but then they can run the ball too. People think, oh, it's just gimmick with a tempo. Oh, they just throw the ball all the time. They ran the ball in that game almost twice as much as they threw it, but they make it count when they throw the ball. Hooker is a Heisman candidate, no doubt about it. And Small going over 100 yards. Brew McCoy now over 100 yards receiving in consecutive games. They've been doing this without maybe the best receiver in the SEC in Cedric Tillman.
Right.
So we'll get to him in a minute. But this is really impressive. They didn't have their starting left tackle. Right. LSU didn't have their starting left tackle. Then they lost their starting left guard, and they looked lost. And Tennessee took advantage of that with stunts and pressures to that side to put strain on them to know what they were doing. Tim Banks went to those pressures knowing that was the best way to win, with them being a little bit susceptible, young and injured on the back end. So he said, you know what, we're going to heat up Jaden Daniels, and they're not going to throw down the field that much anyway. Just the coaching, the adjustments, all of them supreme, where Brian Kelly was making desperate fourth down decisions and all those kind of stuff. But Tennessee does that because teams don't want to give them the ball back. So it's a really good team, and they made a statement nationally in that win.
No doubt about it. I mean, they played really well on offense. Again, the defense is getting better. Are they elite? No, but they're not bottom of the barrel either. They're probably middle of the road rankings wise and statistically. And that's all that you need to be. You don't have to be a top 10 defense with that offense and Heupel calling the plays. You just have to be serviceable, opportunistic, make some fourth down stops, get a turnover here and there. And again, to me, tell me about the defense a little bit. Again, that's the bugaboo. That'll be a big matchup in this game coming up. But tell me a little bit about the defense.
Yeah, you're right. They played better. Against Florida, they played more zone than what we typically would see with a Tim Banks defense. They're a pressure team typically. But this year, they've had an improved pass rush where they've at times just rushed their front four and gotten home. Other times, they've affected the quarterback without a sack. And then other times, they just heat them up with different kinds of blitzes, DBs, linebackers, different things like that. They have a wide array of different kinds of blitzes. They ran a lot of stunts. Like I mentioned, they confused LSU's offensive line. That was a little bit different twist that we haven't seen them do as much. You know, they're sampling in some young players like Joshua Josephs, man. He had a sack on Daniels, super explosive, big time long arms and can run like a deer. Jack linebacker Byron Young had 2.5 sacks, where he was all SEC coming into the season. They needed him to be their best pass rusher. He only had 1 actual sack coming into this game, but he's come close a lot. And he affected the quarterback in the final play against Florida. So he's impacting QBs, even if he didn't have a whole bunch of sacks, but he did in this game. A lot of guys had a really good game. They were better on the back end, but they need that pass rush to help them on the back end. And look, honestly, a part of that, Jason, was the opponent. LSU was not willing to throw the ball down the field for whatever reason. Booty, he just doesn't have chemistry with his coaching staff for Daniels. Obviously, Alabama presents a whole different challenge from that standpoint. Although young and banged up at the wide receiver position, who's available for them in a lot of ways can really change this game. But Tennessee will be far greater challenged against Alabama with their defense. But just really like what we saw from a scheme standpoint. We'll see if the steps they took in this game, in that LSU game, can carry over to some degree, even though the challenge is going to be tougher.
So let's go to Alabama real quick. Obviously, they struggle with A&M. No Bryce Young. You figured they wouldn't be as potent offensively with Milroe at quarterback. They weren't. You know, he several turnovers, that kind of stuff, and they had to run the ball a lot more, or they weren't able to throw the ball very well. Last play of the game, LSU, I mean, who would have thought A&M would have had one play from the 2-yard line to win the game? Not many people in the country. Give me your thoughts. Last play of the game, Texas A&M, Alabama.
Yeah, Jason, I'm hearing a lot of people say that is the worst play call I've ever seen in college football, and what an idiot Jimbo Fisher is.
Right.
Let me go back and watch this. Let me tell you what happened there. And Nick Saban even admitted in the postgame, he's like, we changed it because there was a timeout just before that. Yeah. He said we changed our leverage on the perimeter just before the play during that timeout. So the corner over there, number 3, he's playing now outside leverage between the sideline and the receiver, which means they're trying to get that receiver to redirect inside where they had the safety kind of lined up close to the line of scrimmage, but you could tell he was cheating over. He was ready to play that any sort of slant. So now that's a 2-on-1 to that side. If that's your play call and you have 1-on-1 on the other side, including with your tight end, who you've had really good success in that game, you can't go where the numbers aren't in your favor.
Right.
That was on Haynes King.
Right.
That's 1. 2, Haynes King was late throwing that ball.
Yep.
He didn't, the receiver had already started his break back towards the sideline when Haynes King threw the ball. By that time, he has to come back to try to make a play on the ball, or else he's not going to catch it. So,
and even if he would have caught it, he was at the 2-yard line when he caught it.
Right. But that's not because of the play call.
Right.
That's because of Haynes King and the receiver. I think the receiver cut that short because he thought he was going to be able to get outside of the of the corner, and he couldn't. So he cut it off. But King needs to have that ball out before he breaks to where it's there at the goal line. And so his momentum doesn't take him back. And even if Jimbo said, this is the play you're going to run, if you're Haynes King and you're a dude, you have to you have to go a different direction and show that you're aware, and that's the best option, because I bet you Jimbo would be fine with that. So I don't care whether he has ability to audible or not. Haynes King has got to make that decision better and go a different direction in that play. So that's what happened on that last play. it wasn't on Jimbo. To me, it was on Haynes King.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I agree. That's I've seen far worse plays in game-winning situations than that. I mean, and you know there's 2 or 3 progressions in that play. There's not just one option.
Right.
I mean, and like you said, the quarterback has to see that safety cheating to the wide receiver, knowing he's going to get double, because that's their number 1 wide receiver. Stewart was the big freshman. You know, Saban's not going to let Stewart beat him in a one-on-one situation. Which means if you're King, you know you have to go somewhere else with the ball, and I agree with you.
Yeah, or be on time and be so precise that it fits in there before the safety can get there.
Correct. I agree with you 100%. All right, let's go to this week. Before we get to on the field, I know there was an off the field incident at Tennessee over the weekend involving one of their starting safeties, I believe. Give us an update. Did Heupel? I know we're taping this on Monday night, so that obviously a decision may not have been made yet for his status for Saturday. But just give the audience a little update on what Heupel said concerning the situation.
Yeah, senior safety Jalen McCullough, who's been playing and who's talked to the media since he was a freshman. I mean, he sounded so much more mature from the get-go.
Yep.
He wouldn't be one that I would think would at least find himself in this situation. But we saw the police report, obviously, alleging he hit someone that walked into his apartment. He thought he was going in his friend's apartment or whatever. And so sometimes, who knows? Sometimes, as you know, Jason, what's in the police report, people change their story. So we don't know innocent, guilty, any of that kind of stuff. So Josh Heupel was asked about it in the Monday press conference and said, look, we're still gathering information. When administration puts that together, get it to me. We'll talk about it and go from there. So didn't declare suspension or kicked off the team or any of that kind of stuff. And then, we'll see. I would be surprised one way or the other if he plays, because you can't put yourself in that situation to even be trying to declare your innocence and have to go to the legal process and all this investigation and all that. You gotta be smarter than that. And he's at least guilty of putting himself in this situation. So I would be a little surprised, but who knows? Heupel I think has done a good job when there have been incidents of jumping on them, knowing what happened, and then determining that, not just hiding behind the law, which some coaches will do. So if he's not out there, I think it's probably Wesley Walker, who is a Georgia Tech transfer in his first year at Tennessee. He's been splitting time / the number 2 star DB behind Tamarion McDonald. He played a lot of safety at Georgia Tech, was one of their leading tacklers when he was there. And even though he's not listed number 2 at safety, I think he would be the most experienced guy to go back there, paired with Trayvon Flowers. So that's kind of where they would probably go. And it would set up an interesting Georgia Tech versus Georgia Tech potential meetings with Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back. Maybe they meet in the hole, maybe they meet in the open field. So that's kind of another little sidebar to look for. But look, it's not a deep group, Jason, because they haven't played a lot of guys back there. They haven't trusted a whole lot of them. They have other guys that know how to play safety, and they move them around. Christian Charles, corner, said, hey, Coach Willie Martinez, he said we're DBs. We're not just the corner, just the safety. So that is a plus of the versatility, but not a whole lot of bodies back there to deal with all kinds of speed that Alabama brings to the table.
What about Cedric Tillman? Any update there?
Yes, Tillman, Josh Heupel really doesn't talk about injuries, but we try every week. And what he said about Tillman this week is, he said, look, he had that tightrope surgery with the goal of getting back for this game.
Right.
Which is more, we kind of figured that, but he hadn't really put it out there. So at least he verified that. I think there's more of a chance in LSU where I didn't think there's any chance at all. Look, you got to practice by Wednesday, basically.
Right.
And even if he was to try to play, and I still think it might be a little ambitious, we don't know, one, how effective he's going to be, 2, how much he's going to trust it. So, maybe we see him, but in certain packages.
Red zone, maybe red zone stuff.
Right, exactly, where he can just jump up and make a play, that kind of thing. So It's a shame because the way Brew McCoy and Jalen Hyatt are playing right now,
Right.
wide receiver, if a healthy Cedric Tillman, who many thought was the best receiver in the SEC coming in, you kidding me? That trio,
Yeah.
that's the best in the country. And so maybe we'll see that later on in the year. But I think he could make a difference in this game because now you start to get into Alabama when they go rabbit or when they go dime,
Yep.
they go smaller and faster.
You can run the ball. You can run the ball.
You can run the ball, and Tennessee spreads you out as it is. You see the way they line up outside the numbers. They stressed LSU big time, opens the middle of the field. But then also you like your 3 versus 5 or 6 DB matchups that you can now dictate.
Right.
It would be a nice advantage for Tennessee. And Alabama's been a little bit inconsistent in the secondary look. They got 4s and 5 stars, no doubt. That kind of talent is back there. But doesn't mean they can't be beat because they have. And I think Tennessee would have success against Bama secondary with or without Tillman, but even more if he was to find his form pre-injury.
I think a huge underlying matchup in this game is going to be how much time does Tennessee spend preparing for Milroe versus preparing for Young, because 2 separate kind of guys. Young's not going to be running much with that shoulder injury. If he plays, he ain't going to be running much. Whereas Milroe, it's going to be a lead run kind of guy, Lamar Jackson kind of guy, not nearly the thrower, but athletic quarterback that can run.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because with what Tennessee did against LSU, they were much better against a mobile quarterback. I mean, there are some of the players and people we talked to, analysts, that thought Daniels may be even tougher to tackle than Richardson. Richardson more straight line guy, where Daniels can be more slippery, can get to the perimeter, and a better thrower. That really didn't materialize in that game. Tennessee did a better job in not only stunning, but clogging up the middle. And when they'd rush off the edge, they weren't running past Daniels. They had held down the edge, and they had some discipline with their pass rush. So if that sustains, then I think you feel better about if you have to face Milroe, because to me, the passing game is one hand behind their back if it's Milroe.
I agree.
As much as Daniels was, if not more. To me, if I knew that Milroe was a starting quarterback in that game, I'm picking Tennessee. I haven't made my pick yet. That'll be later in the week. It's more up in the air right now with Bryce Young, because it's one thing to get Bryce Young back, but then how, like you mentioned, how effective is he? Is he now not going to escape the pocket like he's so good at, or will he throw it away instead? So that can really change things for Tennessee and help them. But man, the way they got after the passer and more discipline in their rush lanes, I think they would be good with Milroe. But you're right, it's different. They're based on Josh Heupel, the way he answered the question of Bryce Young today. Even though he didn't say we're preparing for Bryce Young, I think they're preparing for Bryce Young with still a package for Milroe. And the good thing is you've played some of those run-heavy quarterbacks the last couple of games. So I think from a defensive philosophy and fundamental standpoint, they won't have to change too much. It's more Bryce Young that you have to be aware and have made different keys than you will against those true running quarterbacks.
And the key to the game to me is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Alabama's going to feed him one way or the other, passing game, running game. He's their best offensive player, in my opinion, outside of Bryce Young. But I mean, to me, that's a huge matchup for that Tennessee defense.
Well, and Tennessee's done a much better job. Their defensive numbers overall aren't glorious, but their run defense has been pretty good. I want to say it's now 7th in the country. Something like that. The pass defense numbers bring the whole defensive numbers down. But they've done a pretty good job. I can't remember since, I think the last time we saw a big run against Tennessee was a Banacanda from Pitt, who just ran for like 300 yards and breaking Tony Dorsett's record at Pitt last week. They've been, ever since he broke off a long run against Tennessee, they've been really good against the run. So their D-line, besides rushing the passer, they've been pretty good. Amari Thomas in the middle of defensive tackle. He's having a outstanding year, and there's a lot of those linebackers filling holes. It's a defense with some ability. Their numbers don't look good because when they've looked bad, like Florida, they look really bad and on their heels. But they have the ability to shut teams down. And you're right, you can't let Gibbs go off on you because Gibbs can kind of erase some issues or limitations you may have in the pass game if you let him bust loose on you.
All right. For the Tennessee offense, to me, the key to the game is with the spread out offense that they do, that you got, the hyper runs, you can't let Will Anderson wreck the game. You got to figure out a way to, again, you know better than as far as offensive line goes for Tennessee. Give me a perspective of what you think their plan of attack will be for Will Anderson.
Well, first off, they didn't have their starting left tackle in that game either, and Gerald Mincey.
Right.
We asked Heupel why he missed the game, and he said he was just out. But thanks a lot. But he said he expects him to be available this week. Here's the thing. He was in a battle with J.J. Crawford going into the year.
Yep.
And really seized that position. And Tennessee had been playing with the same five in the offensive line in all meaningful snaps this year, which was a plus. So Crawford got the start for Mincey, and he played terrific. And Dane Davis, who is the backup tackle, he came in some drives, and he did a nice job also. So that's really encouraging. They had two backups at the left tackle, and both of them handle their own plenty well in that game. They're able to run the ball and open up holes for Jabari Small, ran over 100 yards. And for the most part, they kept Hendon Hooker clean. He was hit sort of front side, but that was because their freshman running back, Dylan Sampson, didn't slide over to pick up a blitz. So I think
Will Anderson's a different beast.
No question. He is by far the best defensive lineman and maybe defensive player that they've faced this year, or maybe will face this year. I actually asked Hendon Hooker in Monday's press conference about knowing where Will Anderson is, and his reaction was, "Oh yeah, that's for sure. We got to know where he's at."
Right.
And Hooker's smart. He knows where guys are at, and he knows how to diagnose it. And I think his running ability. This is a game where they're going to run the Will Anderson side and force him to decide whether he wants to crash in or whether Hooker is going to go by him, in hopes that maybe that slows down his pass rush in other passing situations, or maybe they pop a pass past him too, something to try to slow him down. Also, the spreading of the field widthwise, I think, can maybe help in that regard also, if you can get him now chasing a little bit more on the outside and having to cover more space. But absolutely, he can wreck the game if you don't have a good beat for him. He'll make some plays, there's no doubt about it, but you can't let him wreck you and give you a 7 or a short field the other way.
And again, you're going to see Saban break out some blitz packages that he probably hasn't shown this year, probably saving it for this game. And again, that spreading out of the formations helps Hooker identify the coverages better, where the blitz is coming from, who's coming, who's not coming. So I think that'll be an interesting X's and O's chess match between Heupel and Saban of where that stuff's coming from. So how do you see the game going? Do you see high scoring? Let's assume Bryce Young plays. Do you see this being a game in the 30s? Is that where Tennessee wants this game?
Well, I mean, I think they like it. I think they would be able to. They would feel good if it's a close game late, low scoring or not. But here's a stat that I heard under that Josh Heupel has not won a game as a head coach when they've scored less than 30 points. So lower scoring games, they haven't been able to break through in that regards. Now, I don't know what the exact total number of games that is. Probably not a ton. Definitely hadn't been a lot of them at Tennessee. But so I do expect a high scoring game. And there's just too many offensive weapons, NFL talent, offensive weapons, the tempo as well. So both teams have shown some susceptibility on defense, and I do expect a high-scoring game. I mean, this could this could even get into the 40s
Right.
on both sides. I think it's going to be wild. And
Especially if Bryce Young plays. Especially
Yeah.
if Bryce Young plays.
Absolutely. Now, here's the thing about Tennessee, too, that I don't know how many people are talking about. We talk about tempo. They snap the ball every about 20 seconds from the previous play. Tennessee has been much better when they've slowed their tempo down. From time to time, if it's an important third down or situation, Hooker will back off. They'll quickly get to the line, but he'll back off. They'll make sure they have everything correct and they're on the same page. And they've slowed it down when they need it, and they've been better in those situations. So they can just tighten you up with formation and run up the middle. They can slow it down on you. This year's team, because Hooker has such command of the game and poise and intelligence, they have different ways to respond. They're not just a one-dimensional go, and then if things don't go well, they don't know what to do. That's another sort of elevated aspect of this team that maybe doesn't get talked about a lot, and it will lead to, I think, even more offensive success against Alabama and probably everybody else.
All right, last question. I'll get you out of here. How do you think, again, this is probably the biggest game in Knoxville in a long time, when both teams are, when everybody truly believes Tennessee can beat Alabama, legitimately can match up with them. How do you think the week of the hype, do you think that will affect Tennessee much at all with their roster? Or do you think they're made for this moment and they're ready to go, pull the stunner and show the SEC that Tennessee is truly back?
I don't think it'll impact them. Florida week was big. It was a proving ground for them. College game day was here, and they didn't look impacted at all. You know, the LSU game, now your people are talking about you more coming off of Florida in the open week. They handled that with great maturity. When they played bad teams, they blow them out. They don't overlook them. This team, time and time again, has shown that they handle things 1 week at a time. I'm not a fan of I want to go 1-0 this week.
Right.
But honestly, that's kind of the way they view it. Like, you can start dreaming about college football playoff and all that other stuff, but if you as a player don't take care of your own business, none of that stuff matters. Now, for the fans, it's completely different. and this week, as unrealistic as fans can be at times, Jason, I am not a part of the hold your horses police.
Right.
I'm not telling fans, whoa, it's Alabama.
Right.
I don't think so. This is the best chance Tennessee has to beat this team in their 15-game losing streak. They're one of the best teams in the country, have the number one offense, and they've shown that they don't really have those letdown games. I think, Alabama isn't perfect. I don't think anybody in college football is as talented as they are. So this is a game Tennessee can win, and I'm not poo-pooing that for fans this week. If they want to think win, 2 touchdowns, or what, you just win the game with what they could potentially get, considering they haven't won a national title since '98, and they've had a whole lot of disappointment and drama and
turmoil with the program.
Absolutely. Enjoy this week, and they will. And then if you get that done, then everything is on the table that has seemingly been unreachable during these tough times, a lot of which I've been here to cover, by the way. So a lot of us deserve some fun weeks like this too. So I'm encouraging them, whatever you want to do, whether you think Tennessee is close but not quite there, or if you want to feel great about it, they got a shot in this game, and I'm not dousing any water on top of that. Oh, by the way, it'll be an absolutely insane atmosphere.
Yes.
College game day. I wondered this. College game day, coming back not only in twice in a month to Knoxville, but back-to-back home games.
Right.
So I thought, man, that doesn't happen very long. Last time it happened, Georgia last year. But
you're right. I mean, CBS 3:30 Eastern.
Right.
I mean, it's the primetime #1 game this week, biggest matchup in the country, and you're going to be there covering it. I know you do pregame and postgame for the Ball Network. You'll be on the sidelines. You'll be covering it from head to toe. So definitely tell everybody where they can find your work on 99.1.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Vince Sports on Twitter, and then our website, 991thesportsanimal.com. Those of you watching the video, you can see the web address there. on the screen. And then you're right, we'll have videos of on the field wrap up afterwards, pregame player interview that I do for the Vol Network and a role in the pregame show, and then all kinds of reaction afterwards, all the post game, all of that. 991thesportsanimal.com, and then on our socials, YouTube channel @VentSports, you can find me there. And then our website, it's our station socials, it's Sports Animal 991. So give us a follow and get all that content, man. It'll be just ridiculous. And can't wait for it. It'll be fun. And look, there's a lot of good games around the country too. They could have gone Penn State, Michigan, TCU, Oklahoma State. So they recognize 10,000 fans, according to the UT Chancellor. ESPN said they thought was here for the Florida game for College Game Day. And that is insane.
Yes.
And that's a big reason why they're coming back, because the fans showed out so well last time.
So I can tell you this: be out of the way of the goalpost, because I got a feeling they're coming down if they win the game. So stay out of the way.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, obviously, it would be
the hefty fine. They fine you these days, but I think Tennessee will pay it
for sure. And people are scheming it and all that kind of fun stuff. But I wonder if UT is going to take extra measures to prevent that, or if they're going to want that seen. We'll see. People thought, oh, they're doing it for Florida. I'm like, no, they're not.
No.
There's a chance against Alabama if they pull that upset.
All right, Vince, great work, man. Thanks for the time. Again, follow Vince. He does play-by-play the high school game of the week up in the Knoxville area every Friday night with Jay Graham, the former Tennessee great running back. I know he does a great work there. Vince covers all. He's the play-by-play guy for the baseball team. I even saw Tony Vitello last time on game day.
Yeah.
Who are they going to get? Who's going to be the Tennessee coach? Are they going to have Rick Barnes this week?
I mean, they might, but maybe not in that segment. Maybe they can have him for You Had One Job. But look, obviously everyone points to Peyton, but usually his schedule.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's available. Dolly Parton, I think, would be awesome.
That would be cool.
National name you're looking for. I loved Bianca Belair from the WWE because I watch wrestling, but that not everyone does.
Yeah.
Dolly would be awesome. There's country music artists, so they'll find someone like that, I guess.
All right. Enjoy it, Vince. We'll definitely check in later in the season. Hopefully, if they win this game, then it's all the hype to Georgia. Then it's all the hype to going to Georgia.
Just to think that if Tennessee wins this game, it's a possibility for us to even discuss a college football playoff.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened since I've been here.
Right.
And so that is just insane to think about. So, yeah, then it would be you still got Tennessee, Martin, and Kentucky before Georgia.
Come on,
that's where the talk is going to go. Yeah.
All right, buddy. Have a great week and enjoy the game.
All right, you're the man. Hit me up anytime. Thanks, Jason.
We'll be back on Powers on Sports podcast in just a minute.